something special to share with you, and today is not going to be different. Last week we have Anna with us. She was a registered nurse, and she talked to us how to prevent COVID. How can we, have a sanity during these times that we're living in? And today we have a special guest with us as well. Pastor Debbie is going to introduce him to us.
Good evening and welcome. We're glad you could be with us. So tonight we have with us again Pastor Shawn Paris. He's a pastor here at our Chesapeake conference, and he's studied for a Master's of Divinity and specializes in family ministry. So Shawn, tell us a little bit about your family in case we have some new visitors with us tonight.
Sure. I have a great family, 2 girls, my wife, Michelle, and our 2 daughters, Julianne and Stephanie. They just literally walked in the door from piano lessons. So they're heading off to supper. I made them dinner this evening. And we're dealing with one that is, it keeps reminding us that she'll be a teenager next year. And the other one is 9 years old. So we're in the throes of it now and enjoying every bit of being a family.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, we're so glad you could be with us tonight. We're looking forward to hearing more about making meaningful family memories. So, Shawn, the time is yours.
Well, thank you. Family memories, let me get it right here. Family memories are very important for each and every one of us. If we all thought back, we could probably start pulling memories out of our own hat of things that have happened in our lives with our families that have helped to shape us and who we are. And I want to share some of those meaningful times in my life and make some applications from them. What I want to point out first of all, and we'll come back to this at the end, is that we are constantly making memories with our kids, but not all of them are meaningful. And sometimes the memories we make with them can be detrimental and can cause pain and hurt in their lives, or something that helps to shape them in a negative way for the long haul. I just celebrated my birthday last week, and my wife was asking me why I always get a little down on my birthday. And I didn't know the answer, and I thought about it, and then I realized I really don't have any positive memories from my childhood from my birthday. We were a family. My father had his own construction company, and there were some lean times as he was getting the company started, and that we had a large family. And so birthdays were rather meager. And I know I'm sounding fairly selfish, but it was, my parents did their best to make it meaningful, but it was just a day that would come and go, and we would have a cake and a special meal and a gift, and we moved on. It wasn't a big celebration. And so when my family now wants to do a big celebration, I don't know what to do with it because I don't have the memories that undergird it and help me to respond. So this is part of what we're talking about. I want to share another story with you, and this will help us kind of launch into the real meat of the topic. This is the late 80s, and my family and I was probably a pre-adolescent or early adolescent at this point in time. And we are on a trip. We're heading up to Big Bear, which is in the mountains of Southern California. I grew up in Long Beach in the LA suburbs. And it was getting later in the day, and it had actually gotten dark. And the of some categories and ways in which we do make family memories. The family vacation. There are some things we need to keep in mind when we do a family vacation. One of them is do the family vacation. Plan it, schedule it. Make sure you are not letting opportunities pass by. Again, I mentioned that things were sometimes lean in my growing up years. We didn't have a whole lot, but we had a very loving family. But we still got away. We didn't take 2-week long vacations. I can't remember ever taking a 2-week long vacation. But I can remember my dad taking weekends and going on camping trips and day trips to places like Solvang, a little Dutch village in Central California. We'd drive up there. It's about a 2.5 hour drive. We'd spend the day and come back home. And just simple things that got us together as a family. I remember him taking us gold mining on the East Fork of the San Gabriel River. Boy, memories I will never forget. Good memories, positive things. So we want to prioritize our time and schedule and make sure that nothing interferes with our opportunities to get away, because many of the memories that you will make with your family will be in those recreational times or vacation times. You're probably already thinking of fond memories that you already have of time with your kids on vacations. But there's another piece to this, and that is it's easy for us to plan vacations that cater often one way or the other. And what I mean by this is I know a family that plans a lot of vacations and everything they do is to museums and historical sites. But one of their kids has no interest in that whatsoever. And then I know other families whose all they ever do is go to amusement parks on their family vacations. But does that really meet the interest of the parents as well? So there's a blending where a good memories come when, as we're planning the vacation, we make sure that we sit down and we give our kids a voice, maybe even a vote, and say, hey, what's one thing, if we're going into this area, what's one thing that you really want to do? And we give them a day or give them a part of a day or what have you, depending on the length of the trip or the vacation, and give them an opportunity to find something that they would like to do. That way they know they're part of the family. They will have a positive experience in it. They will be making a memory. They will know that you cared about what they wanted to do. So we're going to talk a fair amount about helping our children connect these positive memories. So, and then at the end of the vacation, don't lose the opportunity. You're going to be stuck in an airplane, stuck in a car, stuck somewhere with them in the evening in a hotel or in a tent. Debrief with them. Talk about the day. Talk about the trip. What was your favorite thing you did today? And help to bring those memories back to them so that they aren't lost. It wasn't just something that passed by. One of the things that we like to do in our family is after a trip or a vacation, we like to go and have our daughters put together a photo book of the trip. And they use Shutterfly or one of those services, and they create a little book, and then we print it off and have it printed and sent to us. And we have memories that we can keep going back to and look at the pictures and talk about it. Go, oh yeah, I remember this. Oh, I do remember that. And sometimes we just do a slideshow of our pictures, all of our digital pictures on our TV, and enjoy that. Another way that you create memories is in your daily routine. Your kids are going to remember your daily routine for as long as they live. They will tell their children about the things that went on in your home, just like you told them about what it was like in your home growing up. So take advantage of the daily routine. Here's some ways you can do that. First of all, have something that your kids can count on, something positive in that daily routine that they can count on every single day. In our home, we have quite a few things that are very routine oriented. My girls know that I make breakfast every morning in our house. While all the girls are getting ready, I've already been up for usually a couple hours, having my own devotions and so forth. And so by the time they get up and have their devotions, my time is free. I start making breakfast. But they look forward to Fridays, because without fail on Fridays, I make pancakes. I make sure that I may make different kinds of pancakes, and every once in a while I surprise them. And on a Wednesday or a Tuesday, I'll make waffles, but the pancakes are on Friday. I particularly don't like pancakes, but they do. And so I've made it part of this routine in our daily life, in our weekly life, where they know they can count on pancakes. In their daily life, they know that at the end of the day, they're going to get a hug and a kiss as they're being tucked in to bed from both my wife and I. We both do that every night when we're available. Some evenings we're just not there during bedtime. I'm out at a meeting, or my wife may be out at a meeting, and it'll only be one or the other who gives, but they know they get a hug and a kiss at bedtime every night, and they look for it. They ask for it. It's a memory that they like. I remember back in my childhood, we had a routine. It came around every week. When the Sabbath hours would come, we had this kerosene lamp, and my mother would have us light the lamp. We would take turns who would light the kerosene lamp. It was a glass, and it was beautiful glass base, glass chimney on it, with red lamp oil in it. And it commemorated for us the beginning of the Sabbath, a memory that I look forward to. And when the interesting thing, the reason I bring this up is that when I got married, I opened this one wedding gift. My wife and I are opening the wedding gifts, and we open one of them, and there is the kerosene lamp. And my mother had given it to me. And she said, "This is for you, for your family and your memories," because she knew that I was the one who always was asking, "Can I light the lamp?" I looked forward to that time when we set everything else aside. And so she wanted to do something to help reinforce that memory and for me to pass it on into my family. So I did. I brought it in to my family. Now, I will say that we don't light it very often anymore because my wife and my daughters can't stand the smell of the lamp oil when it's burning. It irritates them. And so we came up with a different tradition. We have now the smell of the Sabbath, and we take spices and we put them in a little jar, and we open the jar and we smell it, and we go, "Oh, the sweet smell of the Sabbath. Oh, that we may savor it and smell it again soon." And these are just memories. My girls are always asking, oh, can I be the one who opens the smell of the Sabbath? And so we're there making memories. And you'll have to figure out what routine you have that you can help to reinforce and make positive memories. There are negative routines that we get into that, and so we caught ourselves. We've been very careful with technology in our home. And a couple of years ago, my wife and I, who both were the only ones in the house with cell phones, with devices, and but we caught ourselves answering messages and so forth at the dinner table, and yet we're very adamant that we eat together as a family for breakfast and supper. We eat together as a family, and we started evaluating and noticing that our girls were getting the message from us that they weren't that important, not as important as conversation on the device. And so we then made a rule for ourselves as parents, no devices at the table. And for that half hour that we're eating our supper or we're eating our breakfast, we're unreachable. And I think half an hour out of a day is reasonable to say, you know what, children, you have my undivided attention. We're going to talk as a family. There are routines. I'm looking at my notes. I made a lot of notes here. There are routines in our church life that we can talk about, not routines, but memories in our church life. I would not be in church today if it weren't for positive family memories from church. My father was the head deacon. My mother was the head deaconess. My father was the Pathfinder director. We weren't in a small church, but they just threw themselves into the life of the church. And I remember 2 and 3 nights a week, we were at the church doing something. My father being a general contractor, he was always there fixing something in the evenings and stopping by to check on things. And so I just have this positive memory of being there at the church, rendering our services to the church. Being there just about every Sabbath because of the roles that they played. I remember sitting in the second row, and I also remember some of the antics. I mean, we weren't cherubs, I'll tell you that. I was sharing with an organist today that when I was a when I was a teenager, my brothers and I saved up and bought one of those clap on, clap off, the clappers, and we plugged the church organ into it, because there was one person in our congregation that would clap back then. The rest of the congregation felt it wasn't sacred to clap. But this one person would, and they sat right by the organ. And so we thought it'd be funny to have the organ cutting in and out as it lost electricity as this person would clap. And it was funny to us, not to anybody else, but to us, it was funny. So different memories. I remember getting in trouble for that. Not a positive memory, by the way. But there are certain things we can do in church that are meaningful memories. One of them, I mentioned that in my family, we were there at the church all the time. You may not be able to be at the church all the time, but volunteering in some significant way as a family is important. And I'm going to go down a bird walk for just a moment on this. Volunteering as a family, not just for church, but in general, creates very positive memories. Research has been done on this topic that shows that when kids are asked to do volunteer services by the school, and they have to get so many community service credits and so forth, they look at this as an event. And that's all it is to them. They've got to, punch the time clock or get the signature check mark. I completed the task. So it's an event or a task to them. But when they studied children who did community service with their family as a family unit, they found that those young people were much more likely to have a mindset and attitude of service for the rest of their life, because suddenly it was no longer a task. It was part of who they were. It was something not just something they did, but an identity within the family. So doing things as a family is a very powerful tool. And so volunteering together for something at the church. Let me give you an example. My family loves music. We're frequently volunteering to do music at our church. Our girls, I mentioned at the beginning, play piano. They play guitar, and I play trumpet. My wife plays flute. We try to play all kinds of stuff. But in addition to that, we noticed that there was a section of the parking lot that was getting overgrown by the trees. So without any fanfare or anything, we got our girls up on a Sunday morning and we drove over to the church and we trimmed up all those trees and we bundled up all the leaves and we hauled them off. And then we left. And our girls were asking, well, isn't anybody else coming to help? And we told them, no, this is our project. This is what our family is going to do for the church. And they were happy to do it. And we just wanted to reinforce to them that there was something for them to do at the church. Another way that you make memories with your kids is to talk about what they've experienced at church. Unfortunately, church can be full of, well, not just church, but even our homes. We can be very hypocritical. We say one thing, it should be like this, and then they observe us behaving in a very different way. So it's important for us to talk with our young people, help to settle these things down. Let them point out the discrepancies that they're seeing, and maybe we can learn from them and explain it, or maybe even change our own behaviors, but also ask them what they learned. What was it you learned today in the sermon? What did you learn in your Sabbath school class today? And just open up that conversation with them and help them create positive memories of things they've gone on. We do this with our girls, and we caught our oldest daughter was becoming very negative about what was going on in Sabbath school. And so this conversation gave us an opportunity to discuss with her why she felt that way, discuss with the Sabbath school leader what her observations were, and try and steer her to have more positive memories of what was going on at Sabbath school. And has it worked perfectly? No, but it has made a difference. And she is making a trend towards being more positive about her experience at church once again. Do church functions as a family. As much as possible, drive together. In my family, that's not always practical. My role as a pastor, I usually am one of the first ones there and one of the last ones to leave. And I don't want to subject my family to that. But as much as possible, we do try to arrive together and leave together. And this includes church picnics and, all kinds of functions. We have our girls volunteering with a food pantry. Then we arrive together and we leave together with that activity. And so the writing together gives us opportunities to talk together again. It creates these memories. The more time we're together, the more memories we're making. Then there are kind of a subcategory to this. I'm going to put meaningful memories for spirituality. One of the most important things I think you can do with your children is spend time devotionally with them, sing, pray together, read the Bible together, but also study the Bible together. And I'm going to get very specific here about what I mean by studying the Bible together. I was a youth pastor for many, many years, and I was discovering that the knowledge base of our young people with regards to the Bible is shrinking rapidly. And so we could be talking about topics that should be fairly fundamental to Christians, and they are struggling to know what we're talking about. So one of the ways that we can work around this is to study the Bible with our children. And you don't have to be a pastor to do this. And I'm talking about more than just reading a devotional book or reading the Bible with them. I'm actually talking about studying the Bible with them. Get your hands on one. There's plenty of excellent material out there for various ages now. Our denomination puts out a lot of material from the youngest age up through the teen years, where you can study the Bible with them on doctrinal issues or life, what do they call it? Life skills issues, and help them in that study to learn what we believe. Don't wait for baptismal class, is what I'm trying to say. Don't wait for the pastor to be the one who gives that study with them. Because what happens in most young people's lives is that's the only time they get the study. And then they come around, or I shouldn't say the only time, it's one of the few times they get the study until they end up at some evangelistic series years down the road, hearing it for the second time in their 30s or 40s as they're volunteering at the church. They should hear it multiple times. That's discipleship. And it creates a positive memory for them. In the spirituality, another positive memory is, I remember my wife talks about the same thing, how she would get up in the morning and find her father studying his Bible. And I remember getting up in the morning. My dad was already gone to work. My mother was studying her Bible. And then I became of age, old enough to go to work with my father. And so I started going to work with him. And what I discovered was this beat up old NIV Bible. And the outside edges of the Bible were, especially in the center of the Bible. I have my Bible right here. So right in the center, there was this band of dark where you could just see his fingers had turned the pages, and the oils from his fingers and so forth had just created this dark band across the pages. And then when you got to the book of Romans, you could see that he had really poured over those pages and read them. And I discovered him during the lunch hour. He would get up early, he would drive to work, get on the job. And then when he would stop for lunch, he would go out to his truck, get his Bible out, and he would read while he ate his lunch. And I watched him do that time and time again. That was a memory for me. Watching my mother and my father study reinforced in me how important it is for me to study the word. And so it's not just telling them you need to have devotions, it's showing them and creating that memory where they know that we live what we believe. If you don't know what Bible studies to use or with regards to studying with your children, ask your pastor. I have encouraged families in my church and told them, hey, use this Bible study. And when you're done with it, let me know if you need more, or if your child has a deep interest at this time and they want to begin to study for baptism, give me a call. And a lot of times I will actually ask the parents to participate in the baptismal studies. And I want this to be a collaborative event. So I can't reinforce enough the positive memory of studying the Bible with your children. That's going to be huge. We are constantly, as I said, making memories with our kids, positive ones and negative ones. And I can remember some of the negative ones with my parents. As a youth pastor, I witnessed quite a few negative experiences. I want to caution us from allowing our kids to be in charge of all the memories at home. You are the parent, and you are there to guide your children and prepare them for life. And we're not just talking about guiding and preparing them for life in this world. We're talking about guiding them and preparing them for life eternal. And when we put that into perspective, the memories that we're making really carry a lot more weight. So let me give an example. Years ago, at another church, where I was a youth pastor, I noticed that a lot of our young people were just burnt out. I think I mentioned this the last time that I did a presentation. I want to go over it again because of how important it is. A lot of our young people were burnt out, and they were involved in many, many different activities every day. Some of them were in band and in choir and in elite choir, special choir, plus the school play and gymnastics, and you name it, they were doing it. It's something, sometimes the things they were doing conflicted with other activities that they were signed up for. And the kids they didn't realize it. And mom and dad didn't step in to tell them, hey, pick one or two that you really are passionate about and do it well. Instead, they were doing everything. But what happened, I saw that for years, and I knew the kids were being burned out. And then I suddenly ran across a second issue that was happening. It was burning the whole family out. And so here's what ended up happening. This is what clued me in. One Sabbath, a parent came to me and was talking with me and said, I'm sorry we weren't here this last week, but we had been gone for 6 weeks straight at a different church each week, with choir this and bells that and band over here. And they said, and so we finally had a Sabbath where there was nothing scheduled. And so we said, you know what? Let's just take a family day and stay at home. And on the surface, I sat there and I smiled and I said, you need that. You need that from time to time. And then I thought about it and I realized, but what is the message? What is the memory that our young people take away from that? When life gets chaotic and life gets crazy and life gets busy, it's our spirituality that we can put on hold. Now we can stay home. It's okay to take a break from our spiritual life. Now, if you're doing church at home or something like that, I'm not trying to knock those ideas. But as I probed with this family, I discovered that this wasn't just happening every once in a while. It was happening almost every time they got a break, they stayed home from church. And then as I probed a little farther, I found that they had also started to slack off on having family worship because homework was getting in the way, plus all these activities. They were just barely getting home in time. And then they just get home barely in time enough to get their homework done, and they didn't have time for worship. And the message that our young people take away from it's the hidden messages, I guess I'm trying to say. We have the overt memories we're creating and the hidden memories that we're creating, the things that our kids remember that we don't realize how they're interpreting them. And we need to be thinking about how they're interpreting everything we do and what type of memories are we really making. At the end of the day, when all is said and done, I want my kids to remember our family to be loving and sympathetic. I don't want them to have memories of us being harsh and indifferent. Yeah, I have bad days and sometimes I'm gruff, but I want the big picture to be that we were loving and sympathetic. I want their memories to run the course of saying, hey, our family had fun, and not that our family was full of strife and all we ever did was argue. I want our kids to remember that we put God first and not the things of this world first. These are the memories I want my children to have. And I want to make them meaningful. So I'm going to be deliberate and I'm going to plan them. And when opportunities are dropped in my lap that I didn't plan, I'm going to seize them and make positive, meaningful memories for my family. All right. I think we're going to go to our questions and answers. So I'm going to turn it back over to Pastor Debbie and Pastor Paulo.
Oh, thank you very much, Pastor Shawn. I think this is very timely. We all talk about this amazing opportunity with quarantine and
yes.
orders. Oh, the families have more time together, but really, I'm not so sure that we're being as intentional as we could be with the time that we have. And then as things start opening up and you start feeling the stress of got to get you to school on time, got to remember up from school, the running as it's going to start picking up again. I really see the importance of being so much more intentional.
I think that's the key word is intentionality. It takes intentionality to pull this off. It just doesn't happen by accident.
Well, and that was one of the questions that I had written down to ask you was, right there at the end, you're talking about, your goals and what you want your daughters to remember from their childhood or from their family life growing up. And it kind of crossed my mind. Is that something, having parents maybe sit down as a husband and wife sit down and just really be intentional about making that list? What is important to us? What do we want our children to remember? And actually writing it down to make it a little more real and more in the front of their minds.
It should be something that if you're going to be intentional, you have to intentionally talk about it. You have to come up with some kind of purpose or goal or even a mission statement for your family. Why do we, what is our, so much in the realms of parenting, I find that many parents parent by default. They had children and now they're just going through trying to make sure their children survive. But parenting should be intentional as well. We should have a plan. We should know what our end goal is as a parent. We should recognize that as a parent, I am actually an underparent, that God, the creator, is my child's parent. And in that sense, as an underparent, I'm really and I mentioned this the last time I spoke, I'm really more of a sibling spiritually to my children. And so I'm like an older sibling spiritually to them. And so my goal is to help them connect with their Heavenly Father more directly. And that takes planning. It takes me talking with my wife. We had to talk about, well, what is it going to look like? We made deliberate decisions of what types of parents we were going to be before we ever became parents. And it has guided us and shaped us. And sometimes we have to remind each other, hey, don't you remember we agreed that this is the type of parent we're going to be? And usually it's my wife reminding me more than I remind her, but I'm a little more of a free spirit in that way. Thus the organ at the church going in and out. Does that answer that question?
So,
yes, thank you.
So there is a question here from our viewers that says, if you never started, how do you begin, especially if they are already grown? How can we start? That's the question that someone is asking.
Yeah, and that is a challenging one. How do you reel things back in and hit the reset button? The younger your children are, the easier it is. I mentioned this last time, hard in, easy out principle, but it's never too late. Even with adult children, it's not too late. You can begin to make those positive memories with them. But the older they are, the main thing, how do we start if they're older? The older they are, the slower you need to start. That's really one of the key things. It's a shock to them to just suddenly see radical demands of change. So you just kind of ease in. You make a plan. If I had teenagers and I was just starting with teenagers, I'm not going to say, hey, I just heard this great lecture and we're going to have worship in the morning, we're going to have worship in the evening, and you're going to like it. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't do that. I would say, hey, how about we gather once a week and have a worship together? And if things go well, hey, how about you guys like this? I'm enjoying it as well. Why don't we try it twice a week? And you build into it. You kind of are building back into it. But if you try to jump in with and do a marathon when you're just learning to crawl, you'll have open rebellion in the ranks. Again, the younger the children are, the easier it is to pull that off. They'll think it's a great game. The older they are, the more challenging it's going to be. So you're going to want to start small, have your end goal in mind, and begin to make a plan as to what are the steps I have to take to reach my end goal.
Well, and I was thinking as you were talking about what about including them? If they're adult children with adult families, mm-hmm. even including them, oh, hey, I was thinking about, having this family get together. And then when it comes around again about a year, mm-hmm. your goal might be every year, but you just, and then let them help plan and organize
exactly
what you're mm-hmm. doing. But then, when you're coming up on about 10 months later, that was a lot of fun. We should do that again. And start planning the next one with them. And before they know it, you have a family activity that's happening.
Again, just like we said in the vacation, give them a voice and a vote. That's very important. That's how you get buy-in and cooperation. Give folks a voice and a vote.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask a question.
I think also.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I think also that, sometimes we need to sit down with our kids and say, you know what, I'm sorry, you have been doing this wrong, and how about if you do this, as you said, once a week? Because I think sometimes we need to tell our kids that we mess up. As a parents, that's we always going to do something that should be better. And I know that every time I sit down to my kids and I say, you know what, I messed up in this area. We need to, how about if you help me to correct that? So I'm inviting them to correct something that's wrong in the family, mm-hmm. and all the time, okay, let's, there is no, I'm not telling them, let's do it. I'm saying, hey, I messed up as a father here, and I need you to help me to be a better father. So I always keep the eyes on my kids like, oh, all right, I saw that already. So, and I think that's also part brings our humanity to our kids and say, I'm human, I make mistakes. Can you try to do something here as a family now?
That's a great point. Excellent point. There's one of the greatest things we hear as parents is when our children say, I forgive you, Daddy, because we're humble enough to admit that we're not. And what a lesson they learn when they see that their parents are humble. It helps to, in scripture, one of the worst things a person can be is proud. It's really the root of selfishness, and to say, I'm going to humble myself even before my children, and just be truthful to them that I'm broken just like they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
So Shawn, you go ahead, Pastor Deb. Sorry.
That's okay. So when you were talking about family vacations, I was thinking about that. We haven't been real aggressive and consistent on family vacations either. Actually, if it is a vacation, it's because we went to visit family. It's not necessarily that we went and did something as a family. And so we went and visited extended families. But as I was thinking about that, I was thinking, when I think about my childhood, I never once was my family taking never once were we ever taken on a family vacation. And my husband's family, same thing. There just wasn't the budget for it. And so I think it just kind of doesn't come naturally. And I was just kind of wondering what advice would you give to get started in these situations where
Sure.
it's not a natural thing? We never really experienced it.
Well, first of all, remember that no one can define what a vacation is for you. It's what is a vacation is unique to each person. So, I mentioned, Debbie, we never went on what you would see, what media and society would say is a vacation. We didn't have that kind of money growing up. We never did that. Our vacations were day trips and throw the tent in the vehicle, and we're going to go, and roast hot dogs over a fire and sleep out in the, on the beach or up in the mountains. That was vacation for us. It was 2 days.
And I can honestly say we never even did that.
Yeah. So if the way you do that, there are so many things that are low budget you can do if the budget is an issue. The key is, especially in our area, if you're, I realize we're online, so when I say our area, that could be anywhere. But if you're in the DC metro area, the Baltimore area, there are plenty of free things to do. You can get out and see and do things as a family. Lots of national parks around us and great state parks and so forth that are relatively inexpensive to go to and spend time together. But the key is spending time together. The things that everyone enjoys, things that, something for everyone, and that's relaxing, that isn't creating stress for the family, but it's actually relieving the stress and creating memories and, just bringing joy and relationship back to the center of the family. So again, to sum that up, it really is.
So, yeah.
Don't let anyone else define for you what a vacation is. For every family, it's going to be different. But do what works for your family.
Great.
Just make sure you do something.
Yeah. So, Shawn, you mentioned something that I think is valuable. I think one of the most things valuable for us to do with our families, our kids, is volunteering together.
Absolutely.
Is doing something together with the community and being there and helping. My question for you is, why sometimes, because you mentioned about a word that you mentioned a couple of times, it being intentional with the memories, being intentional, volunteering, being intentional, devotional. So why do you think sometimes, the parents, they kind of, I'm not putting this as a priority. I put my job as a priority. I put my career. I put my car, my house. And sometimes, many times, I hear parents say, "No, I'm doing this for my kids. I want them to have a better life. I want them to have a comfortable life. So what is the balance that we can help to say, okay, what is priority, for our own for our own kids? Because you mentioned something that's the most crucial for us. We are helping them to be in heaven. This is not it. So that's not the place here. But as a parent, our main goal is to prepare them to be in heaven with us. So what else could you say to help the parents? Okay, what is my main priority here? How can I make some cuts in my time? How can I make some adjustment in my time to focus more in my own kids?
So I recently heard a presentation, and one of those in that presentation, they were talking about this common idea that's out there, that when we are facing our day, we usually are facing two different things in each day: the urgent and the important. And we often spend the bulk of our energy and time on the urgent because it has to get done, but it isn't necessarily those things that are important. It's those crazy activities or work responsibilities or even home responsibilities. An urgent activity would be, is it really that important that I get the toilet to flush right. No, but it's urgent. It needs to get done. Otherwise it's disruptive to the home. It's urgent that the trash get taken out. It's urgent that the car's oil get changed and so forth. And sometimes urgent and important do cross over each other, and they're both. But we're talking about really important things. What's really important to me? And urgent often gets in and starts pushing against what's important. But there's a third factor that we probably all have heard about, the urgent and the important. But there's a third factor that we need to ask ourselves. Not only is it urgent or important, but also, is it lasting? What is going to give me the most joy over time? What over time is really going to be the most meaningful in my life? And that should help us govern how we allocate our time each day. Because, the reality is we have to go to work. We have to provide for our families. There's no doubt about that. But do we have to give them every minute of the day? And this is one of the challenges that families are facing right now. Technology was meant to make our lives easier. And in reality, technology has made our lives much more complex. The average American now works more hours because they're accessible at home. Emails can be reached at home. Text messages follow you everywhere. Your cell phone's always in your purse or on your hip or in your pocket. And so now your employer can get a hold of you and ask you to do things all hours of the day and night. And so it's harder to get away from work. This is, there's studies that have backed this up. And so we need to be able to say, now, wait a minute. No, I gave you what you asked for when I was at the office or when I was at work today. Now it's my time to do what's important with my family, and to create those boundaries and say, you know what, I know where the line is between urgent and important and what is lasting, what will endure. And I want to make sure I allocate my time to those things that when I am sitting in my rocking chair someday, looking at my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren going, this is lasting. And I have a relationship with them, and they're going to be with me for eternity. That will bring me joy. But to sit there and say, hey, I did all this great stuff at work. No tombstone ever talks about all the great things people did at work. It talks about a loving father or wife or brother or sister. It talks about relationship. And that's where we need to invest the bulk of our time and our energy. And maybe not our, work takes up a lot of our time, but it needs to take priority in our life and say, this is a high priority to me. This, by the way, is very hard for guys. Much easier for ladies than it is for guys. Our identity as a male, our identity is wrapped up in our work. And to break that away, I struggle with that. To break away from that identity and say, you know what? No, my identity is really in relationship and not in work, is very challenging.
And we have a question from a viewer, and you've kind of answered it. I'm going to go ahead and put it there in case you want to add something to it. The comment is made that my friends have more memories with my kids than I do. What can I do to make it better? My husband and I work all the time and we don't take vacation. What can you suggest to us?
Oh, that's complicated. You're asking a hard question because I don't know your unique circumstances. And so I can make recommendations that may just not work because every circumstance is very unique. But I would start by asking myself the question, why am I working and why is my husband working as much as we are? Is it really, really necessary? If my family is my highest priority, what can I do to put them ahead of work? These are some of the questions I would begin to ask. I grew up in a family where my father worked 6 days a week because he had his own business. And if I wanted to spend time with him, I had to go to work with him. And when I talked about these fun memories that we did, these campouts and stuff like that, that was 2 or 3 times a year. The rest of the year, he worked 6 days a week. I remember him telling me one time, he woke me up. I was about 16 years old. And I said, I'd been working with him on the weekends and in the summers. And I said, Dad, you know what? You work so much, you don't even have time to enjoy the things that you've worked for. And I remember him telling me, he says, well, it's in the 10 Commandments. I said, what? It's not in the 10 Commandments. He says, yes, right there, the fourth commandment, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. And he was serious. He was somewhat of a workaholic. But it's challenging because he was looking at it from the standpoint of, I have to work 6 days a week, this much of the year, so that I can afford to take 2 weekends off with my family. And that.
So, yeah, Shawn, I think this is very important. As a church, we are made up of families, units. So it's a little families here, families there. So that's what the church is made of. And also, you mentioned the importance of studying together the Bible, go beyond our devotional. Unfortunately, nowadays we know that our homes, many of our church families, they don't do the worshiping home.
That's
and
correct.
This is being taken because we can work whatever we want, but when you go back home, you have that time. But sometimes we leave our kids in the games, we turn on TV, and you don't. We are not being intentional to say, hey, family, let's just stop here, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and let's do this devotional as a family, this worship together as a family. I'm not even going what you mentioned, is studying the Bible, but at least, have our devotional time with our families. I mean, this is so important. I would like you, we have just a few more minutes, but I would like you to help us a little bit more on that. I have teenagers now. My kids, they are in college. And you do always, we have done our devotional in home or worship in home. And I see my kids growing now. My oldest is going to be turned 21. And my youngest is 18, is going to turn 19. And when they're back home from college, we say, guys, time's to worship. I see my kids now older. They are talking to their phones with their colleagues or whatever, their friends. And they say, okay, now I call you later because now we are going to do the devotional or worship, So, but sometimes we have left that behind. We don't see the importance of that. And, help us a little bit more. How can we make this a priority as well? Because I don't believe, sorry to say that, I don't buy the thing about time when it comes to family worship. Because nobody works 24 hours a day.
That's correct.
Nobody works 24 hours a day. Let's say if you work 15 hours a day, it's a lot. If you are being paid by hour, you make a lot of money. I don't need it. But let's say you work 15 hours a day. You have 10 hours a day. You want to tell me you don't have, during those 10 hours, you don't have like 15, 20 minutes to stop and worship your family? So we are all busy. We all have, a lot of things to do. Help us a little bit with that. How can we be more intentional on at least on that devotional with our own families?
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts. First of all, the timing, you're absolutely right. Time, we have the time. There are plenty of research out there, studies that show how much time the average American spends with the television. So let's swap some of that time out and say, you know what, I'm going to give up this much time each day that I would be relaxing in front of the TV in order to connect with my family and to connect with the Lord in worship. And to that end, one of the things that I think is important for us to consider when we do family devotions is one of the reasons we don't do it. There are a couple of reasons. One of the main reasons that Dr. Kara Powell at the Fuller Youth Institute discovered is that families don't know how. We've lost the art. This is a generational thing now. We've had an entire generation go past. So now I'm talking about our generation. Our families didn't do, on average, devotions with us. So now we don't have it in our memory to know how to do it for our children. what is devotions? What does it look like? How do we do that? And perhaps that's a whole different topic that's in itself is a topic of what it's, how do you do worship as a family? And so that's one key piece is how. I think the second key piece is it's not interesting. We don't make family worship interesting when we do it. For any of us, we sit down and we read a dry passage of scripture. We don't know what to do with it when we're done. For our kids, we read Bible story books with them. They love them. We talk about, at the end of the story, we talk about, well, what do you think the lesson was there? We don't tell them the lesson. We did when they were younger. Now that they're older, we want them to tell us, what do you think? Last night we read about the fiery furnace, and we said, so what do you think why is that in the Bible? Why would God want us to know that story? And they would share with us why it was there. And we prayed together, and we had a running prayer list. I think one of the other key things, especially as our kids get older, as they get into the teen years, is we assume that we have, it's true, we have a limited amount of time to influence them. But because of that, we often feel like we have to tell them stuff. And so we become very preachy, and it becomes it's not a fun experience for them to be preached at. What I discovered in youth ministry years ago was that we assumed we knew everything they needed for life. And it was by accident one week that the speaker that we had lined up for our program for our Vespers on a Friday night didn't show up, and we had nothing. And so I just pulled out of my hat, hey, this week we're actually going to allow you, the young people, to ask any questions you want to ask. We're going to break into small groups, and we're just going to talk. We couldn't get the kids to go home that night. At 11 o'clock, we said, hey, your parents are going to be worrying about you. You got to go. But it was a flood of all the things that they needed, that the gaps that we hadn't filled spiritually for them. And so there's a bit of that as in our families as well, conversations that we're not having that need to be had spiritually, that we don't even know the questions our young people, our children, our own children are wrestling with. Some of them are relationship questions. Some of them are, you will not believe how many times I just had a young person 2 weeks ago, and I'm not a youth pastor anymore, ask me, Pastor Shawn, I have no clue what I'm going to do for a career. And I said, well, what are your interests? Video gaming. I said, I have no clue what you're going to do for a career either. But it opened a conversation, and they're our young people are wrestling. These are things where how's that a devotional? They ask, what am I going to do for a career? How's that devotional? It's hugely devotional, because your life is surrendered to Christ. And if it's surrendered to Christ, shouldn't we be asking him what you're going to do for a career, what he has in store for your life? Instead, our young people are just picking something they like and going to college, and then finding that it's not fruitful for them because it's not what God had in store for them from the beginning, what he had pre-wired them to do with their life. I don't know. I kind of rambled there. And I don't know if I hit the nail on the head on that question or not. But I guess the two big ones are make it interesting as you can, what your family enjoys. If your family's into reading, read together. If they're musical, sing together. Make it interesting, and realize that there are some of us out there that get it, that it's a lost art. And if you need materials on how to give devotionals and stuff, there are family worship aids out there, even online. You can search them online, and there are resources out there. I encourage you, if you're struggling on, I don't know how, there's help out there in that arena. So look for it. Ask your pastor, ask Google. It's not your pastor, but it's the next best thing.
Yeah.
Pastor Shawn,
But Shawn, just one comment here. I think what you mentioned, having this conversation during our worship, during devotional, my meaningful conversation with my kids, because again, they are older, always happened during the devotional time about
Mhm.
dating, about sex, about about work, about career, was in that devotional worship family time that those topics came along.
Mhm.
So it was not like, okay, this is the Bible, shut up, listen, I want to read this. No, this came, this all, the other day I was talking to my wife, our meaningful conversation with our kids regarding life, all aspects of life, was a continuation of our worship service, that we continue to talk to them. And, I think that I keep emphasizing, that's why I was asking you again, because this is so important because we as a church, we're made up of this family unit, how important it is that we stop during the day and have time with them and worship with them, and talk about life afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And that conversation when you have, just to piggyback on that, what you're saying is so true, that the devotional life opens up the conversation for the rest of the day. It makes you approachable to your children, and it makes you someone they can trust to have those meaningful conversations with. Because in devotionals, it isn't just reading, it's wrestling personally with real issues in life. And when they see you wrestle with those issues, as they're also wrestling with their own issues, they know that you can be real and you can be trusted and that you can be honest with them. And it just opens up the conversation for the rest of the day.
Well, Pastor Shawn, this has been powerful, very much needed, very necessary at a time such as this, as we're dealing with so many issues now within the families, and that was without a pandemic.
Yes.
And so we thank you. We thank you very much for the time and dedication that you spend on these topics. And I personally am excited to be more intentional and go out and make great memories with my kids for the couple of years that I have them left in my home. And we'll pray that for everyone, that everyone would be motivated and encouraged to make good memories with your family. It's about relationships.
Yes, and one of the best memories anyone can ever make is to always remember to pick your kids up at school.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you have any other questions, feel free to put them into the Facebook page there, and maybe we can come back and check again. We hope you have a great evening, and we'll see you next Tuesday for Tuesday Topics. Have a good night.